life is short. And when you realize, like, as I say, you don't have like 700 bonus years stored away in a drawer somewhere, and if you want to do something, you got to do it now. It lights a fire under your tush. It's about the ripples you leave. If you share freely of yourself, you will leave a very big ripple. But if you don't share fully of yourself, then a very small ripple will be left behind.
Hi, Indie author. This conversation is for you. We're talking about writing with the end in mind, so your book leaves a lasting mark, creating a ripple effect that goes beyond sales, and why great formatting and design matter just as much as your words. Joining me is bestselling author and designer Karen Salmonson. She's sold over 2 million books and courses, been featured on Oprah, CNN, and the New York Times. Her latest book, Your To Die for Life, is a bold invitation to stop waiting for someday and start building your legacy now. I was reading your book, Your To Die for Life, in my hammock this weekend, and I got to the part where you were talking about dying in a joyful way. And right at that moment, I kid not, I fell off the hammock onto the grass and the wooden frame. And it felt like the universe was giving me a literal wake up call about living fully. And after this, I took your vitality quiz and I ranked 41 plus. And I was like, okay, what do you think about, getting 41 in your vitality score?
Well, how old are you? I can't tell. You look so young.
In my late 30s.
Yes, yes. It just means that you're loving what you do, but you're probably a little overwhelmed and you just need to slow down a little, I'm guessing, So, yeah, that's what I'm guessing.
Yeah, and I know you're not only a best-selling author, you are also a designer, even an award-winning designer. The cool thing about you is that you can also illustrate this humor in your designs and so on. I know that your books have also such a distinctive visual style. For authors who aren't designers, what's your advice on how to create or collaborate on illustrations that elevate their book?
So for some of the more art directed ones, I created the whole book from beginning to end and sent it to the publisher. Back then, this was like my first book that was very designy was How to Be Happy, Damn It. And I told my agent about this book before there was curse words in book titles. She thought I was nuts. I'm like, this is a self-help book. It's called How to Be Happy, Damn It. Because I was reading all these self-help books and ripping off the covers. I was embarrassed to read them, or I'd read a book that was a self-help book and I'd want to recommend it to a friend, but I felt like it was kind of an insult. Here, you need this self-help book. So I thought there should be self-help for people who wouldn't be caught dead doing self-help, or self-help that you could give to a friend as a gift and they're not going to punch you because it looks kind of cool. So that's how I came up with How to Be Happy, Damn It. And she's like, I don't understand this book. And I said, oh, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm sorry. I love you, but I want to do this book. So I still do this. I do the cover of a book while I'm writing it. And now it's more easy for people to do that. You just go on Canva. It kind of gets me feeling like it's a book. And then that motivates me. But for How to Be Happy, Damn It, I art directed. I brought in, back then we had to use InDesign and Photoshop. And I was a creative director in advertising before I started writing books. So I brought in somebody and I creative directed the book with them. They understood InDesign and Photoshop. And we did the whole book from beginning to end. And the publisher bought it, I think, because it was such a hard sell. And I think publishing houses or people in general are a little fearful and a little lazy. And by saying, this is what the book looks like, I took the fear out, because they're like, oh, now I get what she means by it's designy. And I took the laziness out because this is what it looks like. And we wound up having a bidding war for that book. And that book is one of my bigger bestsellers. It sold 250,000 copies. So what I do now is whenever I'm working on a new book, I do the cover first so I can really see it. But I also believe that how people read these days, even if you don't have illustrations in your book, people still are visual without even knowing they're visual. You need to have short paragraphs, bullet points that points or like single sentences. Make the page feel visual. Even this new book, the Your To Die for Life book, if you look at it with like headlines and it pops, so it feels like it's going to be easy to read. If your book has large paragraphs and somebody sees it in a bookstore, it's going to accidentally communicate this is a hard book to read. And plus, you want sentences to pop out. You want the flip through. So I always make sure that all my books, even the ones that don't have any illustrations in it, have like the flip through where sentences can pop out that grab people and where it looks easier to read if it's just like shorter paragraphs than those big, large paragraphs. So break up your paragraphs, make the interior visual like that too.
Are there any other recommendations for indie authors you would have, because they, of course, have to do it all alone? In this case, it was, a wonderful example of a publisher who said, okay, I'm going to take this as it is and then going to publish it, which is amazing. But there are many who don't want to wait because they might be already like 60 or 70 and thinking, I don't know how long I have to live. And I don't want to wait like 2 years or so for all the things.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? So what are your recommendations? If I'm an indie author, I thought these recommendations were already pretty nice, especially in regard to formatting. Is there anything else you would recommend if we're thinking about a book?
I've written fiction and nonfiction, but I think that both fiction and nonfiction need what I call Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. It's so weird. Nonfiction needs it too. I don't know if you say this in your own words to your authors, but you need to know beginning, start with the pain points if it's nonfiction or a premise or whatever it is. Then the middle, you kind of like explain it, and then you have to end with some kind of something, a little bit of a surprise ending or some final point that wasn't really revealed up front. So even in my new book, and I'll give it away because it's nonfiction, it's not really giving it away. The end is that we are here to be of service. Like that's a big part that I realized it even more as I was writing the book and that's what legacy is. Even if it's your core values, how you give back to others, that we are not meant to live in a vacuum and that we are meant to connect and in meaningful relationships, meaningful experiences, being of service. So I kind of drive that point home more in the end. That was my like big Act 3. And it wasn't obvious in Act 1, Act 2. So you need to give them something in Act 3 in a nonfiction book. And I also believe that a lot of people, when they're writing a book, they just kind of stay on the first part of it and they keep like polishing chapter 1 before they move on to chapter 2 and chapter 3. I believe you have to get sloppy copy. Just get it out there, because I myself have done that where it's like, oh no, I can't move on to chapter 2 until I get chapter 3. Get it all, sloppy copy it all out, and then go in and polish it. And then when you polish it, a lot of people start at chapter 1. Start at chapter 11, start at chapter 2, because otherwise the front of the book, I've read books like this where the front of the book starts off strong and then it's like all over the place. So give your love to all the different chapters in your book. And if you're stuck, you don't have to even start on chapter 1. Like if you feel like you got like the middle of the book is where you're, oh, I really get what I want to say here. Start at a place that you're confident in. So I also recommend that for people. And then reading your book out loud. And the other thing that happens is I notice sometimes that when I was done, like if I was sending my book in pieces to my agent, that after I press send on the book to my agent, I would notice everything because I was reading it from how they were reading it. And so if you purposefully read when you're rereading the book, don't think about an agent. Think about your ideal reader. Like, what is somebody else going to think? Or your friend? Because at one point, my friend Bonnie was like, oh, I want to read it as you're writing it. So as I was writing, what would Bonnie think of this? But write it for you. But like, make sure you're understanding what it is. And also reading it out loud helps because you can hear it better and you can hear where you want to rush through because you're like, oh no, this part isn't good, So all these different ways that you experience it as you're writing it help you to edit it, because a lot of being a writer is being a rewriter. You have to go in and kind of change it. And And then another thing that I do, I change locations. If I'm only writing at home, I have this brain that's different than if I'm in a cafe, or if I'm in a different room in my home, or if I'm outside, or if I sometimes send it to myself on my phone and read it on a bench. I notice things different. So change where you're reading it. Your brain will notice different things in it.
Many ask me always, how can I find my ideal reader? And I know you've published like more than 20 books, and these are also like different genres and different kinds of books. So I'd love to know, how over all those years have you like found your ideal readers in this case?
When I have a book, it's like in my craw. Like I gotta get this out there. Like my How to Be Happy, damn it, was really, I was reading so many different kinds of books on Buddhism and psychology and philosophy. And I was like, oh, I want to share this. They need to read this. And I think I thought about pain points that people were in. So many people are unhappy because of this, or my bounce back book. I went through something, turned my pain into purpose. I think that's a lot of it. I think that is it, turning my own pain into purpose. And so my reader is people of the tribe with my same pain points at that time in my life. So Your To Die For Life is my pain points of wanting to live a really meaningful life. And I sometimes write, my book is my accountability buddy to make sure I'm really living this way. And so I also write it for me. It's like, this is true. Now I got to really, and also sometimes I write to really clarify what it is. Like I know what I'm writing when I go in, but by the time I'm done, I really know that I know it. Like I knew going in meaningful relationships. Yes, I know that at this point in my life, but I convince myself and I really get it. It goes into my bloodstream when I write a book, but it's for people that have, I think my tribe are people that are struggling because I write nonfiction. So it's different for each. I guess I could look at it from fiction too. But for my types of books, it's people that are wrestling with the same questions and fears and problems as me, my pain point tribe. That's who it is. So it doesn't even have to be an age. Like, I'm going to be 65 in 4 days. But yeah. But I don't say I write for 60 somethings. Someone who's 30, someone who's 40. It's my pain point tribe. It's my struggling with this life conundrum tribe. It's the struggle that I'm writing for. You know what I mean?
I definitely 100%. What I also love is many indie authors, of course, they don't want to sound salesy and they don't see their books as products. However, of course, as a product manager, I see my newsletter and also books as a product. So I started reading your book. Then I was, okay, let's check out Karen on her website. And then I found your site, which should like leverage the book. And I thought, oh, cool. The wording is similar, the style of writing, the stickiness of the ideas. And also, yeah, I felt like as if someone would read my mind with everything you're sharing. How are you like doing this with the design as well as the content? And also like combined with online writing, do you have the feeling that online writing is similar to writing a book? Because I think with formatting, yours felt like a newsletter or felt like a short, joyful story.
It's weird because I come from advertising and marketing. I do sometimes think, how am I going to market this? So I guess I do think a bit on those terms. And then I have to get myself excited about that. My agent, before this, I was doing all the happiness books. And I felt like I was a conveyor belt of like happiness books because the publishing house kept saying, do a happy book on this, a happy book on that. So I was doing a lot of books with that topic, but I wanted to do this death book. And right after my dad died. So it's been in me for 20 years. And this might even be an even more pertinent story. So my agent said, don't write about a book about death. Nobody's going to buy a book about death. That's like the opposite of happiness. That's not on brand for you. So this is sort of answering your question. But I felt it in my craw. And then the years were going by and I kept, let's do the death book. Karen, enough with the death book. And then, so finally I thought to myself, I remember the other agent didn't want to do How to Be Happy, damn it, because she didn't see that. And then I thought, oh, I guess I was feistier and braver when I was younger, that I left that agent. This is what I thought. This is the power of identity in action here. I guess I was feistier and braver when I was younger because I left that agent and did the book anyway. And then I thought, wait a minute, I'm still feisty. I'm still brave. I'm going to leave this agent. See, that's the power of identity, because I want to be associated with feisty and brave. So, and then it was like, I'm doing it because identity, I want to be that way. And so I broke up with that agent and did this book anyway. But then I thought, okay, is she right? How do you market a book on death? So but I found that as an exciting challenge because I believed in everything. When you believe that your book should be read, and I believe this book, yes, it's about death. It's really a book about meaningful living. And the way to do it is to light a fire under your tush by reminding yourself that life is finite, and then when you live that way, you do live bolder. I do live bolder, realizing that life is short and that I need to do things now. So this is going to be strange too, because you asked me about my website. I forgot about this until this exact moment. I created the website before I wrote the book also as an exercise because I'm a branding person. This is really weird. I don't know if I recommend this for everybody, but slightly, I thought, how do I get this out there? Can I market it? I did think that way, but I don't know, again, if this is for everybody, because I am a marketing person by background. And I started to play around with the website first, the same way that I create covers first, and think like, how do I convince people? What pain points are they in? Who really needs to read this book? And I started to do that. And after I really could feel like I could market it, I was like, okay, I'm moving forward. I know that's very odd, and it might not work for everybody. You don't have to do the whole website thing, but to think about it. And I also write more in my voice. And if you're really writing from your own voice, you're going to be able to sell it, because really good marketing is just you being excited. It's you exuberant about your freaking book. And I was just so exuberant about it. It wasn't about, like, I don't even write like in a salesy way. I write in oh, I can't wait to show you my book way.
Yeah.
And that's the best kind of marketing, where you're not trying to like convince someone. You're just like in that state of excitement, and you're sharing the ideas in it. And then it's like having a conversation with people. Like, you know what? If you don't share your book, then you can't give people this message or this entertainment, whatever gets you so excited about your book. Remember why you're excited for people to read it. And that's where you market it from. That's really the whole secret of good marketing, is just be exuberant about why people should read your book. And that's going to show up.
I love this so much. You're like, put this or said this perfectly, because often, Christina, you're a marketing manager and brand manager, you know how to like market your stuff. But I'm always saying, the moment you're thinking about an idea, put this idea out there, practice in public, start your blog, start a movement, ask people whether they would be interested by just sharing the stories. If you're an indie author, grab a copy of Your to Die for Life, and then check out my YouTube videos featuring authors who've gone before you to inspire your own journey. And if you want to go deeper, join the inner circle of the Online Writing Club, where you can meet Karen for an exclusive masterclass and connect with like-minded authors on the same page. I know many are tuning in and they are, for instance, thinking about writing a book. We want to like get them from someday to today, you know what I mean? In your book, you write about killing the someday syndrome for writers who've been sitting on a book idea for years. How can they use mortality awareness to finally start or finish their book and their work? What do you recommend here?
Well, I could write a whole book on this. So what I think is, we act like we have forever. Like, we hear the words, life is short. but it's like become kind of like perfume copy, like white noise, like something you would put on a pillow. But life is short. And when you realize, like, as I say, you don't have like 700 bonus years stored away in a drawer somewhere, and if you want to do something, you got to do it now. It lights a fire under your tush. So if you keep saying, someday I will write a book, or someday I will, whatever it is, and you never know. You just really don't. And so when you think about mortality awareness, what it does is it creates urgency. And urgency creates action. And instead of being fearful of like, oh, what if the book fails? You get more fearful of, what if I get to the end of my life and I didn't do all the things I wanted to do? And it's a wake up call for your priorities. And then I also, because my background is behavioral change, I help people to move forward, because as I've been doing these interviews, I've realized something, that yes, people fear death, but you know what? I think they fear more change. They, like, oh, I have to change something to get this. Yes, you have to change something. One of the tools for change that I recommend in the book is becoming aware of what your core values are, and then creating identity-based statements with your core values. I just jumped all over the place and took from like chapter 1, chapter 7, chapter 12, but that's sort of like the quick broad strokes of the book. That I do recommend something called identity-based habits based on your core values as a way to make the change happen.
Oh, I love this so much. You know that I'm a brand manager and marketing manager, and my MBA was based on identity-led marketing and brand management. And it's all about this identity, no matter what, like a bottle of water or a balloon or whatever, everything has like every object, every human, of course, has this unique personality and identity, which I really, really love. Do you have something for especially indie authors, like an exercise, what we can do to find out what our values actually are?
Well, the main one that I recommend in the book is to start off writing your own eulogy. And that will help you realize. So we have business plans. We'll write like a 5-year business plan, but we don't write like a mission statement for our life. And I believe that, as Yogi Berra says, he's a funny writer. He says, if you don't know where you're going, you probably won't get there. And Aristotle and Steve Covey, a lot of modern day people, as well as Aristotle, say that you have to begin with the ends in mind. And then, so Aristotle says, if you want to live a good life, he writes a lot about the good life, you have to imagine who you want to be on your deathbed, begin with the ends in mind, and then reverse engineer it. So that's why I recommend writing a eulogy. And to make it easy on people, in the book, I have a fill in the blank eulogy, like a Mad Libs. Do you remember Mad Libs when we were kids? And you fill in the blanks, and a lot of the blanks in it are core values. Because here's the thing. People think like if they cross out everything on their to-do list, that, that's all they need to do to live a good life. But a to-do list has a fatal flaw, is about productivity. And a lot of things on your to-do list aren't going to give you a good life. You could end up at the end of your life crossing out everything and feeling like you wasted your life, because they don't include the things of meaning. Nobody's going to read your Google Calendar at your funeral. And nobody's going to read your LinkedIn profile at your funeral. You know what they're going to do? They're going to tell stories that have to do with your core values. Oh, she was so kind. She always did this. Oh, she was so thoughtful. Oh, she was such a supportive friend. She was such a good communicator. I remember that time and it's weird. All of the things that you're going to think about at the end of your life are oddly based on core values and habits that you did with them, but those don't show up on your to-do list. So that's why I recommend people write a to-die list. And a lot of the things on your to-die list are inspired by what you write in your eulogy. So what I have people do is you write your eulogy, and then that becomes aspirational eulogy you, right? And then you look at current you, and you look at aspirational eulogy. And if you've written your eulogy in an honest way, you're going to see some gaps. So you're going to think, how do I get from current me to aspirational eulogy me? What are the bridge habits that I need to do to become aspirational eulogy me, the me who I want, future me that I'm going to be proud of. And so a lot of these bridge habits are based on uh, doing meaningful things with your life, the types of things that don't show up on your to-do list, the types of things I recommend people put on their to-die list. So, for example, I might write on there, I am a loving person, and so I show up for the people that I love. And then as I'm going through my day, did I do that today? Oh my gosh, I was so busy with work today. So it reminds you to live by your core values. And these are what I call identity based statements. And there's been a lot of studies that prove that when you think of your identity first, you're more likely to do the habit, because otherwise you feel really weird to think that you didn't do the habit. So, quick example. My friend Danielle was having a birthday party, and I live in New York, and she lives in Connecticut, and my driver's license expired because here in New York, I don't drive anymore. So I got her birthday invite, and I thought, oh, I guess I won't be able to go. I don't drive a car. It's going to be really hard for me to get to Connecticut. That was my first instinct. And then I write down, and I know from my eulogy that meaningful friendships are like top for me. So I wrote down, I'm a loving person, so I find a way to get my tush to Connecticut for Danielle's birthday party. And then what happens is, because I remind myself that being loving is so important to me, I really make sure that I find a way to get to Connecticut. But if I didn't write down the core value, I might not be as likely, but it creates cognitive dissonance in me. If I am a loving person versus find a way to get to Connecticut versus I am a loving person, and so I find a way. So when you remind yourself of what matters to you, you're more likely to do it. So I am a brave person, and you value that, or I'm a strong person, so I will find a way through this, or I am a creative person, I can write this book. Whatever is a core value that you want to identify with. Because right now, we are listening to our identities. If you think you're sloppy, you're going to do the sloppy habits of a sloppy person. If you think you're disciplined, you're going to do the habits. So you have to think, what are my top priorities, and am I living by them? What habits do I need to do to live by them? And write those down every day, brainstorm them. So I have a journaling prompt that I have people do, and it's, who do I need to become to get everything I want in my life? Or who do I need to become to, and then write the rest of my book? Or who do I need to become to stop fighting with my partner or my teenage son? The answer is always a core value. It's so strange. People don't think about it this way, but your identity is the puppet master for your habits, not the other way around. Frank Sinatra sang Doobie Doobie Doo is a great song, singer, or whatever, but he's a backwards personal development author. It's be do, be do, be do. First, you have to own the identity to do the habits, and you're more likely to do the habits if you own that as your identity. In fact, most of the habits that you're doing now, it's because that if you think I am a healthy person or I'm an athletic person, then you're more likely to go to the gym. And if you're not going to the gym, it's because your identity needs a little wake up call.
Everything you're sharing here with us, especially the bridge habits, I love this. We have, for instance, one tribe member, Gunnar Habits. He wrote a book, and this is also how I found you, Karen. Not only on Substack, but his book is called Happy Habits, and yours is also called Happy Habits. And I said, "Do you know that Karen's book is also called Happy Habits?" He said, "Yes, but he changed something, I think, in the title or so on Amazon, so it should be fine." However, he's not talking about the bridge habits, but I'm definitely gonna suggest reading your book as well to maybe also include this in his book, because he's talking about all kinds of habit books and so on and so on. And I love this that you say the core values are then linked to our priorities, and this is similar to, again, brand building, where everything is about these core values and about your identity. And I think this is also important for building a soulful newsletter business and building a soulful book business and so on. And I think everything you shared shows that mortality awareness doesn't have to be morbid. It's definitely motivating. I
No,
also love the idea of writing with the end in mind. This is also what I'm doing. Karen, how did you discover this, that this this more mortality awareness doesn't have to be morbid, it's motivating. How has it changed the way you approach your own creative work? Because I know, of course, how everything changed in your life, but maybe you can tell us a bit more about, what was like the trigger that helped you to become the person you are now.
Well, I have two things that got me to write this book. One is kind of quirky, funny, and one is a little sad. So I'm going to start with the quirky, funny to warm everybody up. So I'll start with the sad. The first is I wrote a book about death, not because I had a near death experience, but because I had a near life experience. And I made up the term near life, but I think it needs a term because so many of us are doing it. So a near life experience is when you're on your phone so much scrolling through that you're distracted from your real life. So you're not in your life, you're near your life. You're on autopilot. Or it could be you're out at dinner with a loved one and your mind is elsewhere. You're like worrying about something in the future or you're ruminating about something in your past. So again, you're not fully in your life, you're near your life. Or you keep saying someday I will, someday. And you keep putting off your happiness to someday. So again, you're not doing it in your life now. And I woke up to realizing I was having near life experiences when my dad died. And I realized that, again, life is short. You never know. And it really woke me up to like we kind of disassociate from the idea of death. And there's a reason for this. It actually really does create fear in us. There's a term called terror management. So that's part of the reason why I wrote the book with humor, but it doesn't have to be terror if you really just accept the finite nature. So what I did was I gave my dad's eulogy, and as a writer, I started thinking, what would my eulogy be? What do I want my life to be? And that's what kind of triggered the idea of writing my own eulogy. And then I realized I was very sad when my dad died for so many reasons, but one of them was I wasn't a mom yet. And I thought, oh, my dad's never going to get to see me as a mom or meet my kid. And then I realized I was working too hard. And I looked at the top regrets of the dying. And sure enough, one of the top regrets of the dying is I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I looked at all of the top regrets of the dying. And I thought, what do I need to do now to make sure I don't die with these top regrets of the dying? A lot of them, I wish I had spent more time with my friends. I wish that I had lived more true to myself. I wish that I had done something of service to give back to the world. So I looked at each of them and I created habits that would help me to make sure that I wouldn't die with those. So I wish I wouldn't work so hard. That was a big one for me. So I realized back then I was like in what's called beast mode. And so I realized that, yes, that can get you some places, but if you really want to have a great life, you have to be in what I renamed as best mode, when you have the balance, when you take the time to be a good friend to somebody, when you are aware of your core values. So I started to live with, and that's when I started to write my to die list to make sure every day. So I realized also there were 7 core values that if you do them, and you embrace them, you will not die with the top regrets of the dying. And I'll tell you what those are really quickly. First one is A for authentic. You have to live true to yourself because that was big regrets of the dying. B is brave. You can't stay in your comfort zone. Big regrets of the dying. C is curious because there's a saying, we repeat what we don't repair. So if you have negative patterns in your life or you just feel like you're spinning your wheels all the time, you have to get curious as to why. Like, why does this keep happening? What am I supposed to learn here? And plus, curiosity creates awe, and a lot of life is about having awe for things. D is discerning, because a lot of us say, oh, I didn't have time to do that. I didn't have time to write my book. I didn't have time to go to, Danielle's birthday party, or whatever it is. But the truth is, you do have time. Saying I don't have enough time is like the adult equivalent of the dog ate my homework. Because if your priorities are right, if you're in touch with core values, then you can kind of rejigger things. So you do have time for the things that really matter versus like watching a Netflix series for like 5 hours or whatever it is. So discerning is a good core value. E is empathic love. I called it empathic love for two reasons. One, I wanted to go in alphabetical order and I needed an E letter. But then I realized empathic love is better than just saying love, because love might just sound like lust or chemistry. And I wanted a word that was about like everything to do with colleagues, to strangers, to your dog, to everything. And empathic love is like that, where you're just compassionate love. F is fun, and that is a core value. And that's a big one to enjoy a good life, because again, people keep saying, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I'd spent more time with my friends. So you have to schedule in fun. That should be on your to-do list. And then G is grateful, to really appreciate what you have now while you're on your way to becoming aspirational eulogy you. So make sure that you enjoy and you're awake and present each day and not just rushing through. So those are the top 7 core values. If you embrace them, then you will avoid the top regrets of the dying.
I love this so much, because we all know these stories about, top regrets of the dying. And now we also know, what could become our core values, what would be so important to not regret the things that we've done. And how I found you was because one of the tribe members, she shared a post from you. Patricia, she's 86 years old. Funnily, she also now published a few days back her memoir, an alphabet memoir, so similar to the course, like ABCDE, the ABC of my life. She was like, Christina, you have to read about this. And I loved this post where you said, you can compare death with a boss, and you're getting laid off by your boss, fired by your boss. And then, you're talking with your boss like, oh, I love my job. Why do you fire me? I love my family. I love my work, my garden, my neighbor, and so on. And then he said, well, I have 47,000 hours of material here. Well, I can show you. You're like complaining all the time. And I thought, oh man, this is so spot on. Another thing that was so inspiring for me, or where I thought, oh wow, there is this connection between Karen and me, was when you shared, and this is something that was missing when I asked you the question, was that when your dad died, and he died pretty early for you in his 60s, am I right? Then you, for the first time, thought about getting pregnant. What was so interesting was that you shared that the birth date of your son is the death date of your dad.
Yeah, that is a big part of proof that mortality awareness, death is like the best life coach. It really wakes you up. I realized, okay, I'm working too hard. I didn't really tell this part of the story. And I say I want to have a family, but what am I doing? Mortality awareness woke me up to having a baby more than my own biological clock. It was so interesting. So then from then on, whenever I would date somebody, I would really make sure that they, I didn't say I needed a family right away, but I was more clear about wanting to have a family. And I just kind of dated with that more in mind rather than dating just for whatever. And then I had a baby that was born on the exact day that my dad had died 4 years earlier. It was kind of a weird wink from the universe that my son's birthday is my dad's death day. So I felt like that was him going, I see you down there. Good going, Karen. So yeah, it's meaningful to me that that's my son's birthday.
And I also loved you talking about like this legacy lens. You talk about like these mini ripples, like small ways we impact others alongside big achievements. What does legacy mean to you personally, especially if we're thinking about like indie authors and people who are like thinking about starting to write? What do you think is legacy for us?
Well, I have a whole chapter on that, and it's kind of woven in throughout the book, because what I keep telling people is we're here and then we're not. And it's up to us to make the here part as meaningful as possible, to put your was here flag on this planet. Like, what do you want to be remembered for? But at the same time, I don't want to give people pressure that like, they have to cure cancer or something. Your legacy can be anything from something small, like stories that you're remembered for that you did that had usually have to do with core values, or it could be a book, or it could be a website, or it could be some project that you did, or giving back, charity, community, that type of thing. In my book, I tell another story about my dad's passing, the one about ripples. But when my dad died, he was in the hospital, and before he died, and I got there first in the morning. I didn't know it was going to be his last day. And my mom came in and she said, Karen, I found this envelope in Dad's bedroom bureau drawer. It's something that you had mailed to him by the post date while you were in college. And I thought, oh my gosh, what did my dad save for so many years? So, and I didn't know this was going to be the day he died, but this was also strangely synchronicitous. So I opened it up and I had ripped some pages from a book, and it didn't say the name of the book at the bottom. So I still don't even know what book, and sent him a note. And this is what the pages said. And I wound up reading this at his eulogy. And this is in the book because I do think that this will help us to figure out what our legacy is. So I kind of loosely memorized it. The book said, everything that is not given is lost. Read those words again. Everything that is not given is lost. This is a potent wake-up call. Every thought, every feeling, every talent, every skill is lost unless you share it with others. But if you hoard of yourself and don't give freely of yourself, then you won't be sharing as much. But when you give, whatever you give, I'm loosely summarizing it here, will then be passed on to this person who will then share it with somebody else, who then will share it with someone else, who then will share it out with someone else. And the metaphor of a pebble being thrown into a pond comes to mind because it's about the ripples you leave. If you share freely of yourself, you will leave a very big ripple. But if you don't share fully of yourself, then a very small ripple will be left behind. So with this in mind, what are you doing to leave ripples behind? So we can leave ripples behind by like what you're doing. You're helping people to write and to be their most creative self and to be brave about doing things. Those are your ripples. Those are your legacies. So ripples can come from core values, or they can come from pain. They can come from turning your pain into purpose and using whatever you've gone through as your school of hard knocks to teach other people to avoid whatever you've gone through. So that's another way to create a legacy, to be out there sharing your story and helping people, advising people with whatever you went through.
I also know that Jon Stewart, he praised your wit, and you've said also that humor is a powerful tool in personal growth. Why do you think is humor so important when tackling these deep or difficult topics? Because many, I think, of the writers watching this might think about how can I, tackle these topics. So I think humor could be one way to approach this.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've always kind of gone for the funny. Like when I was a kid, I read Psychology Today and Mad Magazine. And I joked that if you put Psychology Today, Mad Magazine in a blender and press frappe, you'd get my books. Because I always just kind of go towards that. Well, studies say in the TED Talk that I gave that it helps to free up your mind, that it loosens some of the stress in your brain, that they gave two different groups of people two different kinds of videos to watch. One group, they gave serious, sad videos, and the other, they gave like funny videos. And then they gave them all puzzles to solve. And the group that got to watch the funny videos were better at problem solving because it kind of loosens up your brain. And so I think that humor and playfulness, I say this in the talk and I believe it, are meditation on steroids. That they say like meditation can relax you, but oh my gosh, laughing and just joking about something. The stress mode of your brain is said to stop you from thinking. Like 80% of your brain is power, thinking power is in the neocortex. And it kind of moves you when you're stressed, your animal reptilian brain. I'm giving you a very serious answer for a question about how humor works. So it's funny to give you a serious answer, but it gets you back away from the animal reptile must kill like stress mode, attack, fight, flight brain into your neocortex where you can be better. But I also think it has to do with maybe removing your ego from the situation, because I once joked that my idea of humor, I said this in my 20s, but I remembered it because I said my idea of humor is when bad things happen to anybody who isn't me or something. I forgot how I said it. And then I realized when I'm able to remove me from the bad scenario, like to kind of look at it from outside my ego, I can start laughing at the funny, bad things that happen to me. I can see the humor in them. So I think it's kind of when you're able to just sort of separate yourself from it, you can laugh at it and just sort of kind of see a bird's eye view. But I don't know why humor works, but I just know it does. And they even say that satirical humor can teach better than just like teaching. Like when you can find the satire in it, it really punches it home and you learn really well. So I know sometimes, like when I listen to the funny late night talk show hosts, I kind of get what's going on a little bit more, and I can laugh at what's going on in the United States right now better, and I get it more when I hear it delivered with humor. So I don't know what humor does, but it definitely helps you to learn and just deal with difficult topics better.
Learn how to list your book in the Substack bookstore to get seen and show the world how excited you are about your work. You can join the Online Writing Club for free. Oh, and before you go, subscribe to the channel and make sure to check out the free resources I've linked. Links are in the description. I'll see you inside.